Hi guys, welcome to JVO Tech Talk. Today we are going to discuss about XRP ledger transaction, so which also falls under blockchain category. So blockchain is not a new topic to JVO. We have done several presentation previously, and also last time we have conducted a codeathon. So where you have developed Solidity smart contract on Ethereum platform. So I assume so all of you have some knowledge, whether you remember those things or not while I'm talking. So those terminology you can easily catch up. Okay. We'll start the presentation. So this presentation we are completely talk about XRP ledger and its transaction and different payment types that it has. And what's the difference between Ripple and XRP? Ripple is a software company where its goals to eventually transfer money or value, just as internet moves information today. And they are the creator of Ripple protocol, which include Ripple Consensus Ledger. So this Ripple Consensus Ledger, later renamed as XRP Ledger, and XRP is the digital asset, so that exists independently of Ripple, and so this runs on XRP Ledger, so which is an open source blockchain developed for payments. Both XRP Ledger and XRP would continue to exist even without Ripple. So Ripple actually use XRP to its product, which called XRapid, and which provide banks and other financial institutions with asset on demand liquidity. And Ripple does not in any way own or control the technology behind the cryptocurrency XRP. And being an open source cryptocurrency, it can be used by anyone, including Ripple. And it can be owned by anyone who use XRP ledger. We need to understand clear separation between Ripple and Ripple XRP, where if you go to XRP tutorials or official site, you won't see any word about Ripple other than its history. Reason is there are finite amount of XRP created. Totally, it is 100 billion and never going to be created anymore. And from that, 60 billion of XRP owned by Ripple at the inception state. So this creates a fear in between investors. So because people attracted to cryptocurrency because it's the promise of decentralization. So now with owning good chunk of amount of XRP, so this Ripple can become a central party in future with a monopoly power. They can change the direction of Ripple. So that to avoid that confusion, so what they do, 55 billion of XRP are locked up in a rolling 5-year escrow, and that will be released 1 billion XRP per month. So if you have any confusion with the term escrow, we will discuss that in the future in this later session. And so the unsold portion of escrow that will be returned to the XRP will be returned to the escrow, and adding additional month at end of established 5-year. This approach reassures investors that Ripple could not suddenly flood the market with the significant XRP holding at once. So consensus protocol, that every blockchain use this mechanism to with their cryptographic algorithm, they solve the mathematical calculations to validate the transaction. And so this also verify whether the sender has enough fund in his account, and he is not spending that fund twice. That we call a double spending problem, which we have already discussed in our previous presentation regarding blockchains. And so to solve this issue, so different kind of consensus mechanism used in different blockchains. So I have already written an article regarding this in GVO So if you go and see there, so there are different type of mechanism I have discussed. For example, if we take this proof of work, so this is mostly used in, this mechanism used in Bitcoin, where each node in that network will compete with each other to solve that problem very first. And that node will be rewarded by Bitcoin reward. So this mechanism cause a problem to the network because to become a first node to solve the problem, it has to use very high expensive machines, hardware, and also it requires high electricity usage. And that's the reason transaction cost in Bitcoin is high, and the network is slow. So likewise, different blockchains use different kind of mechanism. So here, XRP protocol consensus, it use federated Byzantine agreement, where each node will trust limited number of other nodes that we call circle. So circle can overlap each other, so that essentially every node in some way connected. They are connected. And transaction validators that they are used to verify the transaction, they are individually selected and accredited before them, having the ability to engage in transaction verification. So everyone who use XRP ledger so can agree the latest state and transaction occurring order, and all valid transaction are processed without needing a central party, a central operator. So there is no point of failure. And while ledger progressing, so some participant can join or leave or behave inappropriately. So if too many participants are unreachable or misbehaving, then totally the network fail. And so to make progress rather than diverging or confirming the invalid transaction. So confirming transaction does not require wasteful or competitive usage of resources, unlike other blockchain. That's how they maintaining the speed. So XRP consensus mechanism very fast comparing to Bitcoin and Ethereum. If you see the ledger, ledgers are shared. Ledger is a shared global ledger that is open to all. And if we take its parts, if I take a ledger, it has header, so which includes the ledger index, hashes, and other content and metadata. And it also has the transaction tree. So transaction were applied to the previous ledger to make this one. And so transaction are the only way to create a new ledger version. And state tree, it has the settings, balance, and other different kind of objects like checks, escrows, and payment channels as of this version. To perform a transaction in XRP, you need cryptographic keys, because in XRP ledger, digital signature proves that transaction is authorized to do a specific set of action. So only signed transaction can be submitted to the network and included into the validated ledger. So to sign a transaction, you need cryptographic key. So this cryptographic key associated with the sender account, and it also closely tied with a specific signing algorithm. So that define mathematical relationship between secret key and the public key. So if you create an account, for example, if you go to XRP Facet website, there you can create your test account or dev account. The difference is test account you can keep longer days, around 90 days. Dev account, that is only for shorter period, even 1 hour or 2 hour. But dev account can perform some complex operation like checks, escrows, but test account can only do direct XRP payments. So based on your requirement, you can create your own account. So once you create an account, you will get an address and a secret. So some may confuse the secret with a private key. We will talk about public key and private key, but but that concept is a little bit different. So here in Ripple, secret use as a seed, where from the seed value you can calculate your private key and public key separately. So here, secret key and private key are two different terms. And you can generate a key based on different algorithms. So XRP support two different algorithms, SecP256K1 and ED25519. So the first algorithm that is mostly used in Bitcoin, and XRP also by default use this type of key pair. But ED25519, that's a new algorithm which has better performance and some complex operation like payment channels. So that gives better performance to the new algorithm. There is a slight difference between the public keys. So ED25519 public keys are 1 byte shorter than SecP256K1. So that to make that public key consistent, they are appending 0xED byte value. Right. So let's see how to programmatically you talk to Ripple server. You can talk to Ripple server using this JSON RPC or WebSocket. WebSocket has an additional JavaScript layer. So in this demonstration, I'm totally using JavaScript framework to communicate with WebSocket. But in our IXPRL project, there we can't use JavaScript for asynchronous call for the mobile. So that what we are using is we are going for mixed approach. For the local computation, we are using Ripple API JavaScript framework. But for the communication with server, we are using direct WebSocket communication. Right. So see, I'm using this library called RippleLib to communicate with Ripple server. So I'm giving the DevNet URL here. And so here, I'm just generating and showing you the address from to generate an address from Ripple. So you can specify the algorithm or not. If you didn't specify, so it will create with SecP256K1. If not, if you specify, then it will create on specific algorithm, and you can specify the classic address if you need. I'll show the different. So this is how it generates, and it gives the address and the secret. Especially if you specify the classic address, it also gives the classic address. The difference is so new address will add some specific tags in along with the classic address. By programmatically, you can convert classic address to new address and vice versa. I will show how to do in later demonstration. And I said we can calculate private key and public key from the seed value, which is our secret. So
Sorry, Priya.
yes,
Ramesh, what was the difference between that X address and address? So there were three things in the last one: X address, classic address, and address without the X.
Yeah, Ravin. So X address and classic address are same, so there is no any difference. But there is a difference between X address and the classic. I'll show. For example,
Is it regarding these different versions that they have come up with over time?
no. It's
Old.
they have different version, but some of the sites still only accepting the previous address, not the new address.
Okay.
Yeah, but Ripple library itself accepts the few places it's accept new address. So I will show while generating checks and everything. So we need the new address. It won't support for the old address.
Okay, it's fine. Okay.
So okay, if we see. So it's like this. So new address contain three different part. We can have a tag for that account and test. As my assumption, we can set a tag to our account, which means even while we are doing transaction. So with the account ID, people very difficult to say that who I am, right? So if you say you are Ravin, so instead of saying your instead of giving your NIC number, you will say I am Ravin, right? So everyone easily identify you as Ravin. So likewise, we can give a name for that account, so that we call tag. So by default it is null. So you in the account setting you can give. So that's the difference between X address and the classic address.
Okay.
So this is the way to retrieve private key and public key from a secret. So I'm just using for your understanding. So I have created two user account for my testing purpose, and I have attached to this model. And here, so this valid secret method, so it will just check the format of secret key and encoding and character length, and derive key pair. So it expect the seed value, which is our secret. So if we send the secret, it will derive the private key and public key. And if you have your public key on the other way around, you can calculate your account address as well mathematically. So that's what I'm doing here. So I have my original address, and I'm deriving the address from the public key, which I have generated from the secret key. And let's check. So these two are identical, right? Okay. And I said you need to sign your transaction with your key pair, right? Cryptographic key pair. It can be three different key pair: master key, regular key, and signer list. So master key is the key pair that you receive when you create an XRP account. But you can use that to sign the transaction. It will work. So I will show that while I'm doing transactions. But most of the people, what they do to secure your master key. So if anyone got your master key, so they can entirely control your account. To secure that, they are using they are create a regular key, and they will attach that regular key to your account. And to sign the transaction, they only use regular key. And there is another way of signing, signer list, so where it allows more than one people to sign a transaction. So let's see. Okay. So here, what I'm trying to do is, I'm checking whether the account has the master key or it is enabled or not. So for that, I need to get the my account info from Ripple. So I am using a request method and getting the account info, passing the XRP address. And from that, I'm getting the account flag. So if I execute, you will understand. So if you see, so this is my account. It has the balance that is 100, I think 10,000 XRP it should be. And it has a flag. If the flag is 0, that means master key pair available for use. So we will verify with this mechanism. So we will perform AND operation with account flag, and we'll say whether it is disabled or not. So currently that is available for use. So if this give a different value, so anyway it will give master key is disabled. So why we people disable? There are only two ways to disable the master key. Either you should enable the signer list, or you should enable the regular key for your account. And to enable a regular key, now we are doing first transaction of this demo. So with the master key, we are going to do a transaction, which means I'm going to enable the regular key. Transaction has 3 steps. We need to prepare transaction JSON. So here what I'm using is I'm using prepare setting method, which will give transaction JSON here. So what I'm doing is I'm setting parameter. Regular key is a new address which I am generating from another address which I have created, and I'm signing that transaction with my user secret and submitting the transaction. So if there is any issue, that will fail. If not, it will success. So this is success, and it has created the regular key. And so what I'm doing is, after generating, so I'm printing the getting the account info again to verify the regular key. In my account info, you can see the regular key has been enabled. Similarly, so while you are signing the transaction, instead of this secret, you can use secret of that regular key pair as well. And next step is signer list. Signer list allow to sign your transaction by more than one people. So here what I'm doing is, I have my account. I have create 3 new addresses, and again I'm using prepare setting method. Instead of regular key, I'm using signer. I'm sending a signer list. So signer list, I'm creating a weighted signer object with 3 different addresses, and I'm giving a weight here, and I'm defining a threshold value. So here the threshold value is 2, which means either this person can sign the transaction, or pair of these two will sign. These 2 people sign, or these 2 people sign, or this single person can also sign. So to sign the transaction, instead of sending the single key, you can send sign list as a parameter. So like this, you need to sign the transaction separately, and you need to append the transaction's signature to this signer list, and you need to submit the transaction. Right, let's move on XRP transaction. So here what we are going to say, we are going to transfer XRP currency from one account to another account. To that we need to create an unsigned transaction. So that's what I have created even in the regular key and signer list. So I have prepare setting, right? I have used prepare setting and get the JSON back. That's a unsigned transaction. then we will sign with that either master key or single regular key or signer list and submit the transaction, and it will be verified through the network. So if trusted validator create the exact same ledger, so ledger declared as validated, and its results will be immutable. Next, we are going to discuss different type of payments available. So direct XRP payment, cross currency, checks, escrows, and payment channels. To transfer normal XRP currency from one account to another account, that we use direct XRP payment. So they are good at speed, and it is very simple and low cost. And to protect XRP ledger from being disrupted by spam or denial service attack, so each transaction must destroy a small amount of XRP that we call transaction cost, and that is designed to increase along with the load on the network, and making it very expensive to deliberately or inadvertently overload the network. So to perform the direct transaction, we need two accounts. That's why I have already created two users. So what I'm doing is, so here instead of prepare setting, I'm using prepare payment. So this process also same. Every time what we are doing is we are creating a transaction. So the step is 3 step: prepare the transaction, and sign the transaction, unsigned JSON, and submit the transaction. Only the thing is the parameters going to be differ and the concept going to be differ. So here what I'm specifying the source address and value and currency, that is XRP, and destination address, value and currency. So if you notice, I'm using max amount here and amount here. So there is a specific reason behind that. So we are transferring one XRP from one account to another account. So why we are using different type of terminology? So the reason is either you should use max amount on source and amount on destination, or you should use amount on source and min amount on destination. Where, so if you use in this way, the transaction cost will be deducted from source. Otherwise, it will be deducted from destination, that we call partial payment. That is also another type of payment type available in XRP. Okay, so here I will similarly, so user one creating the transaction so that it will be signed by users one secret, and submitting the transaction, and I execute this. If you see the payment has been created successful, I will show you actually how it looks like. There are online sites you can use. I'm using this Ripple RM, so where you can test your Ripple account. So I will log in with the second account then. Okay, if you see, this person has received 1 XRP, and it is very slow in loading. Okay, so if you see, this is the transaction which we have created. So it received 1 currency. At the same time, if we log into the source address, this is not exactly 999, right? So it has deducted some other amount. So that we call transaction cost. So So it has account one deducted one. At the same time, it also deducted this 12 drops of XRP. So here the we use different type of terminology. So 1 XRP means so we have transferred 1 XRP, which means 1 million drops. In the transaction ledger, it called as drops, but in normal usage we call it as XRP. That's the difference. So cross currency. So we this means payment involves at least between two different currencies. Say that it could one of them should be non-XRP. So typically this means using one or more currencies issued by a ledger gateway. Such currencies are backed by funds outside XRP ledger and can be withdrawn through the gateway. Normally by default, so cross currency payment deliver fixed amount to their destination at variable cost to their source. And there is another category called partial payment where we can deliver variable amount to destination within a fixed sending limit. So here I had one issue, but I'm not sure whether I'm correct or not. But up to my understanding, so in this demonstration, I will show how to transfer non-XRP currency between two different accounts. There is a way to transfer between XRP currencies to non-XRP. Which means XRP to US dollar or US dollar to Europe. There it has auto bridging capability, which means automatically it will transfer USD to XRP and XRP to USD. So that we need a gateway. So to become we can change the address to gateway, but that process is not publicly available. That codings. So mostly financial institution act as the gateway so that we can fund that institution, and the fund can be withdrawn by the receiver. But direct non-XRP transaction that we can do with I can show in demo. So here what I'm doing is for that. So normally XRP account does not accept non-XRP transaction. So to make it accept, you need to create a path that we call trust line, right? So for example, in this example, user 1 need to send money to user 2. So user 2 is preparing a trust line. So he's saying he can accept the currency USD, and counterparty should be user 1, and the maximum limit is 50. So and he is signing the transaction and submitting. So here, if you see the limited amount is 50 USD, and issuer going to be the sender, and transaction got applied. And now if you go to ledger and check if you get the path, you may see there is a path between this sender account and receiver account. And so here what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to send 1 USD from user 1 to user 2, and I'm allowing partial payment because I have defined it as 1-1, so it's never going to be 1-1. So it may deduct the transaction cost as well. So for that I have made this as partial payment. And so user 1 signing the transaction with his secret key. I think I didn't save. Okay, so the payment happened and it has been transferred successfully. It's $1 USD, right? And next type of transaction is payment type is checks. Checks are very similar to your paper checks, what we use into bank transactions. So it allows people to exchange fund synchronously using a process that is familiar to and accepted by banking industry. So no money will move until the recipient cashes the check back, and check can have a expiration time. So after that, it cannot be cashed. So anyone can cancel the check after it expires, and the sender or recipient can cancel whether the check before it is expire or cashed. And once it is cancelled, the check object removed from the ledger. So to create a check, this has some critical, which means we need to do some workaround. I'll say why. Uh, so you send user one need to send money to user two, and I'm using check create method. He need to create, the sender has to create the check, and receiver has to cash back the check. So that here, if we want, we can specify the expiration. So here I am not specify the expiration, and here I am specifying max value. The reason is uh, uh, this can be a fixed amount or floating amount, which means let's assume person A send us check to person B at 50 XRP value. So the person B can cash back entire 50 XRP currency at once, or he can cash back partially as well. Even 20 XRP first, later he can cash back 50 XRP. That's why we are using this send max value here. And what I'm doing, simply preparing the check and getting the JSON, sign the transaction and submitting. So after that, I need to send the check ID to the user. But there is a problem in XRP. They are not clearly exposing the check ID. Um, According to GitHub issues, they are saying it was a bug, and because of that, we need to do some workaround to get the check ID. So what we are doing, in the response, once we create it, in the response we will get the account address and the sequence number. With that, we are doing some manual calculation. So we are using SHA-2 512 hash and preparing a buffer. So we are adding a specific prefix for that, and then we are getting that address. So that is a classic address, and here this library is not supporting the classic address. It is expecting the new address. So that we are converting. I'm using a library called Ripple address codec. Um, with that, I'm converting that to new address and decoding that address into byte array and appending to this buffer. And then I'm getting the sequence number and converting that and appending to buffer, and finally getting the hex value and slicing up to 64 character and getting the check ID. It was a little bit, we need to perform some workaround here. So okay, so what we are doing, so we have created a, if you see, check object created successfully, and I have derived the check ID with some workaround, and now I'm going to send that check ID to the receiver so that receiver can cash back. So here So receiver specifying the check ID and the amount and currency, and he's signing the transaction with his own secret key and submitting. So let's see, it performed check cash transaction, and it got successful, right? And as I mentioned, so this check can be cancelled. So by using prepare check cancel method. So that you can try it later if you want. And escrows, these are different kind of payments where you can specify conditions. So hope you remember. So I mentioned that 55 billion of XRP hold in 5-year escrow when I am talking about history about Ripple. So this is what that escrow called. So XRP is set aside. No one can use or destroy until the escrow has been successfully finished or cancelled. So before expiration time, only the intended receiver can get the XRP. After expiration time, XRP will be returned back to the sender. So let's assume the receiver failed to cash back that escrow, cash back from escrow within the expiration time. So the XRP will be returned to the sender. There are two type of XRP: time held and conditionally held. Time held means we can give a time condition, which means the receiver can cash back this escrow after specific time period. And conditional held, we use cryptographic condition. So I will explain, and it was a little bit complicated one. So cryptographic condition is a different topic to discuss. But here, what we need to know is um, cryptographic condition means let's assume it has a condition. We are generating a condition mathematically with some algorithms, and it also have the fulfillment to fulfill that condition. So let's assume you are having a security question and an answer. So here the security question will be cryptographic condition. The answer would be the fulfillment. I'll show how to do that. But the limitation is this will only works with XRP, will not support issued currency, which means non-XRP or our own issued currency. And it expect two transaction at least to create escrow and finish or cancel it. So that it is high cost and not suitable for small amount. And when we are using crypto condition, that transaction its cost is high, and there are different cryptocurrency condition available, but Ripple currently only support for pre-image SHA 256. So let's see how to create a time held escrows. Um, so here we have user 1, user 2, and here the first step is prepare escrow creation, and then prepare the receiver will execute the escrow. So so while preparing the escrow, the sender will define the destination as a user 2, and amount transferring is let's say I'm giving 5 XRP, and allow execute after. We can give a expiration to here, but I'm not giving here now. Allow execute after this amount of this date, which means tomorrow, which means he can cash back tomorrow only. And after executing, similarly, here from the response, we can track the sequence number. That sequence number should be sent to the receiver, similar how we are sending the check ID to the receiver. So if you see, so I have created a escrow now, and it got successor, and it is 5 million drops, which means 5 XRP. And let's see what happen if receiver try to cash back this transaction. So I'm sending that escrow sequence as well, and we need to define the user 1 as owner and escrow sequence. Similarly, user 2, he's signing with his secret. So it says I have no permission to perform this requested operation. Why is that? So I have created a future date. If you want to execute now, so you can create without the date, so that it will get the current timestamp. So after that, the user can perform this transaction. Okay, let's move on to conditional escrows. So here, as I mentioned, crypto conditions are the different topics. Here we don't need to worry about that. But what you need to understand is there are several libraries to create crypto conditions. So here, what I'm using is Fibels condition. And crypto library of this Dart, and I'm generating a random byte, and I'm, as I mentioned earlier, so you hope you remember, it only support pre-image SHA algorithm. So I'm creating a condition fulfillment based on that, and I need the condition and the fulfillment. So with get conditioner binary, so I can get the condition, and with serialize binary to hex, and I get the fulfillment. And while creating the escrow, so this we call conditional escrows, I am defining the user to and amount, and allow execute after I'm giving the current date and the condition. So let's see what happens. So okay, it has created the transaction, and this is the condition and the fulfillment, and we need the sequence number 2. So I'm printing at the bottom. So if you see, so here I'm getting the sequence number from here, right? After creating either the sender or receiver can check whether any escrows attached to their account by passing their address. We can use get account method, and type is equal to escrow, and we can pass the parameter, and so if you see, so this is the escrow already created. And I'm using this condition now to cash back this transaction. So condition and fulfillment, and we need the sequence number. So escrow finish. Okay, something wrong with the account. Let's try it again quickly because I assume this account has been destroyed. quickly I create some new accounts and try. Because in the testnet you can hold it for longer time, but you can't try this type of complex operation in the testnet. You need to use devnet. Okay, conditional health. So this is the condition and fulfillment. Should be correct, right? Again, it's giving that account. I think it is not allowing to create. Sometime it happens to me. But this is the way to do that. Anyway, but if the condition and fulfillment are correct, so it will work. Okay, I will move to next one, which is payment channels. This concept is very interesting. So payment channels are advanced feature for sending asynchronous XRP payments. So that can be divided into very small increment and can be settled later. So so here, if you want to send partial payment, so this would be a good option. But again, if you are sending a large amount of payment only, this will be worth. Otherwise, this cost is high. So here, what happened? Sender will create the claim, create the account. So I think it's better if I explain here. Yes. So the step is the payer can create a channel, and he will send the channel details to payee. Payee will check. He will check whether the destination address and the balance amount here the payer has to pay is correct, and payer creates claims. Claims can be partial amounts that you can sign uh, with your local computation, and you can in offline you can send to the pay. So pay will verify the claim, and once he verify, he can provide the good blindly. Uh, if he won't, he can cash back, and there is no any necessary that pay has to cash back that immediately. He can keep that sign in claim, and he can cash back at any time. So this step and this he will provide the goods or service. So this step will repeat again and again, creating the sign, verifying and providing good, and finally he can redeem the client. Pay can redeem the client after redeem. So the request payer can send the request to close the channel. So there is expiration period. If the expiration period pass, anyone, payer or payee, can cancel the channel. So that's a process. Mm, okay, I'll check. Okay, let's move on to page channel. Okay, so I'm creating same thing. So let's see. I was creating a channel. Here I'm using payment channel create method. So I'm creating a channel. The amount is going to be 50. Destination going to be user address and settle delay, which means expiration period. So we need to specify in second. So I'm specifying it for 2 days. And we need to give the user one public key. So how to get the public key? Hope you remember. We can derive from secret with this method. And we will let's see what happened once we sign the transaction. So okay, so transaction got success. Now we have created the payment channel. So he will. So what happens? The payee will inform to payer will inform to payee, and payee will go and check whether the transaction channel has been created to his account. What he do? He will get the account object, and currently I will uh, comment this line because to perform the transaction we need channel ID and public key. We need to derive from at this stage. So okay, so here what I'm doing is I'm getting the account object where this transaction has created the payment channel, and I need the public key, so I can get the public key from here. And next thing, I need the channel ID. To get the channel ID, we need to get the transaction and see. So this is the previous transaction which validated. So we are using that transaction ID. And again, I'm executing this method where you can get channel ID here, right? So you can see channel changes, source, destination, and amount changes. And so I'm replacing here the channel ID, right? Public key also correct. So next step, payer will create claims and send to payee in a rotation, and the payee will verify. So this happen like this. So to create a claim and sign. So we need three property: channel, amount, and private key. So channel, that's what he has created, payer one, and then the amount is from 50 XRP. I'm first transferring 20 XRP, and user one key pair we can derive from the secret which we have already seen, and we will get the signature now. Okay, this is going to be the signature, and what happened? So we have the public key, channel ID, signature. So these information payee will send to payee. So payee will verify. He won't immediately cash. He just verify and kept away. So if he won't, he can do. So I will do. I will show how to do that. So the channel ID going to be this amount and signature that I have already copied, I think, and public key going to be this. And what he is doing, so with this parameter, he is calling verifying payment channel client. So these methods are local methods, so we are not sending to server. So these all things happen mathematically in local machine. So that signature is true, right? So if it's true, then he can blindly believe that and he can, what he will do, he will provide his good and service, and this step will repeat again and again, right? When we want to redeem that cash again, again, another point I have missed. While preparing a client, we are providing the amount 20. So 20 is not. I'm mentioning. Uh, this amount is actually after redeem this claim, what amount this person will get. I will show there is a complex confusion you will get at one point. I'll show where it is. So we have verified now, and we need to play. Uh, we need to cache back that. So channel ID and signature and public. That's three we need. And amount here, I am specifying 2020. So there is a difference between amounts and balance. Amounts means the amounts that have mentioned in this signature, right? And balance means uh, what you will receive after redeem this claim. Here, after redeem this claim, you will receive same 20. That's what I have mentioned it as 20. There is a different scenario as well. So transaction got applied. So we have cashback that transaction, right? Okay. Now the tricky part is again the second, let's assume the second payment. So he is preparing the second payment. Same ID. And so let's see the channel we have created for 50. And first amount we have provide 50. And here what we need to provide is cumulative amount. That means this time we are going to transfer 30, remaining 30. But here we need to specify the cumulative amount. So that reason why is the receiver can claim the cash even without using this, right? So the example what I have shown, he's cash back this transaction first, and next going to be cash back this transaction, right? So without cash back this, if we get the latest claim, he can straight away execute the latest claim, right? So that's the reason we are using this cumulative amount here. Okay, I am preparing this transaction. Hopefully, I don't need to verify now, so it should verify. So I'm directly try to cache back it. I'm giving the signature here. So the public key and the channel ID not going to be changed. And yes, it is correct. And now the amount should be 50 and balance should be 30. Anyone has doubt? So so here the amount means the amount what we specified in the signature. So that is that we specify the cumulative amount 50, and balance going to be we have already paid 20 and 30. Let's assume if this person does not redeem that previous claim, which he has verified and kept away, he didn't cash back that. In that case, the balance should be 50 while we are while he's trying to cash, then the amount balance should be 50. In this case, it should be 30. Right? So payment channel claim and transaction applied successfully. So after cashback enter money, so the payer or payee, they can close the channel. So for that, what we are doing is okay. So here I'm calling two methods: prepare payment channel claim. Similarly, channel ID I'm giving with close true property. Also, I'm getting the account object in the pay channel. Whether I have a pay channel. So if you if you execute this method, you will get the pay channel, but after closing, you might not get anything. So I need to specify the channel ID. I think it is not printing. Why? I don't see any. I don't know why it is not showing, but this method, so just is it just close the channel. At the same time, there is another method called payment channel fund. So what this do is, let's assume you have decided a payment for a specific price, goods or service, and you have defined as 50 XRP. Later, you change your requirement. You are purchasing some additional good, and so that the fund you have allocated for the payment channel is not enough. So for that, you can specifically add some fund for this payment channel. So that's what this method means. And so anytime a recipient can redeem and receive the XRP by authorized by claim, and as I mentioned, so he can wait until the entire transaction complete, and he can execute that finally. And this one very speed with the new algorithm ED25519 and than the SecP 256K1 keys signatures. That's all I prepared for this session. So we discuss transaction and ledgers, and what are the different type of transaction we had, payment type we had. Any question, guys? Anyone there? Okay. I just wonder no one asked question. So okay, so if no one has a question, so we will wrap up the session. Thanks all of you hearing. And I will try to write some blog posts, because these findings are not directly available on the internet, most of the coding. And the challenging part, what I had faced is, if you go to some coding and see like this. Okay, let's see. I'll show the. So here, so all the code snippet. One thing is direct XRP payments. That code snippet for the that only available with the library. So other than that, everything you need to find out your own. So I have gone through several issues and find out these steps to verify all these things. And also here, the methods with they have given for direct WebSocket communication. So in Ripple, sorry, in XBRL we are doing direct communication, but in JavaScript it's totally different. The concept not described in official tutorial is not there in the JavaScript, their official JavaScript library. So that if you are performing with that JavaScript library, it's totally different. I will write some blog post in future. I will talk to Tarandu as well regarding this. If you want to try this, try Ripple, try XRP Ledger. So you can refer those tutorial. Okay, thanks all of you.